This video is going to be about the cQ-Baseline DATR BBands indicator. Go to the chart. This is version 1.1, so I've added a few things and fixed some things. It's still the same idea where you have a moving average and then an envelope, which is the red line, and then this green line is some Bollinger Bands. And I think first I should explain the three basic modes that it has for generating these dots. For example, this one, well, let me show you what the modes are. The basic ATR envelope entry mode, there's entry lines, exit envelopes, and above below the entry bands, and within the exit envelopes. Sounds confusing, but it's not. So first I'll explain this one, which is it's going to generate a dot if it's above or below the entry band, which is this green band. The red bands here are used to generate exits if you want to use that, and that's represented by this X. Every time you see an X, that's an exit. But in order to have an exit, you have to have an entry, so it won't print an exit if there was no entry, if there wasn't one of these dots before it. This price has to be above the entry line or below to generate a dot. The next version is above, below the exit lines, and this is probably the type that most people are going to use. What has to happen is that price has to be above both this exit line and entry band. What happens is if the entry band falls below this envelope, the red line, then it won't print. Even if price is outside that, it won't print it. So this is where you don't want to enter. By the way, these settings, just for an example, an idea of what to expect. You can control the amount of entry signals you get in this mode by changing this value here, the exit multiplier. Say put it to 1.5, and you can see that it reduces a lot of the noise. Price has to really go out of the bands in order to generate a signal. And depending on the baseline you choose, and then the B-band moving average you select and its period, you can come up with a lot of unique entry points. It's quite versatile. When the Bollinger Band gets to the same level as what is set here in this ATR envelope on the entry, which is the green line, like right now it's set to 0, so it's really just displaying the Bollinger Bands by themselves. But if I were to say change this to 0.5, I don't know if you saw some of these. I'll do it a little more, make it a little larger. I'll do it to 0.9. You see, now that's basically most of that is another envelope. It's another way of controlling the entry points. And this is also very noticeable on this, the above, below the entry lines. Right now, the entry multiplier is set at 0.5. And you can raise it, say put it to 1. And what it's going to do is if the Bollinger Band falls below that envelope, then it will display the envelope value. Or if it falls above this lower level, it will display the envelope. So that's another way of helping reduce the amount of false entry points. That's what this value right here is for. This is the period. You can change it. You can make it really small. And it gets kind of choppy, but that might even work better. And then the same thing with the exit. These are just things you can change and try them out and see what works. That's this particular mode. And we got one more mode, and this is above, below the entry bands and within the exit envelopes. This is going to take a little bit of explaining. This mode is instead of using the moving average to display the B-band, this B-band here, this lower one, it's actually tied to this envelope so that when you get a down signal, it actually goes up. So that's why it squeezes here, so that you can generate this. Many times it goes outside of the band and it's too far away from your baseline. You can increase this to keep you out of the chop. You got this one right here, for example, as an entry signal. And then the same thing for the upper. What it's doing is it's putting the Bollinger Band up here. It's coming off of this envelope. So when price starts to go up, it actually goes down, so that it will hopefully get you in a little bit sooner, than otherwise. It's very versatile. You can get a lot of different things. This mode is worth, I would say, spending some time with. That's the 3 basic modes of the indicator. Okay, the next thing I'd like to talk about is the B-bands calculation mode. In version 1, there was actually 2 different versions. One that was based on the DATR to generate the Bollinger Bands, one for the up and one for the down. And then there was another one that basically used price. Well, I just combined them. These are the various modes that you can choose from. And the normal DATR is sending the directional ATR, for the up band, it's going to be generated using the directional ATR in the up direction, and vice versa for the down. Then it has which here we'll show you what this is. This is for just this particular setting. This is what it looks like. And you can change these, for example, slightly different response. There's also an alternative way of calculating B-bands. And then here is the normal version, but the directional ATR, they're reversed. As you can see, you get this, kind of cuts it a little sooner than usual. And then the same thing with the alternative way of calculating the Bollinger Band. When you start messing with it, you'll see the differences. Right now, they probably don't really make that much sense. And then we have right here for the price input, this is just normal Bollinger Band type response, no up and down, just the normal Bollinger Band. Of course, if you're using this, which you can apply a different moving average to calculate the Bollinger Bands from. Some of them are different, but a lot of them don't really do a whole lot. This up here, this DTR input mode, it only works on these first 4, okay? For example, like right now, we're in this price. If changing this does nothing. The next mode is the price, high, and low mode, which is basically just sending the high of each candle to generate the upper Bollinger Band and the low to generate the lower Bollinger Band. And then you can reverse that, where the high is sent to the low and the low is sent to the high. Again, it sort of captures these changes a little faster. And sometimes when you get into chop, it may keep you out of a lot of bad trades. So again, it's one of those things. You just have to try to mess with it and find a setting that works for you. And then it's the same thing. I have the alternative way of calculating these things. And this is the reverse of that. You can see these things don't cross over. They don't, but you can see how close they get. This is just this type of mode using this moving average. So, and then down here, this is the I-bands function. When you use it, you can't change this moving average doesn't do anything. And then this is basically B-bands are being calculated by the ATR. In essence, that's the B-bands calculation mode. I should explain the red dots. There's a number of ways the red dots, and they generally mean don't enter a trade. And you can turn it off if you don't want to deal with that. but this, it's currently set for distance from the baseline. We're on the 1 hour using a pretty volatile, it's pretty volatile here, so it was set to 2 times the ATR. If it's above that, it will generate a red dot. But it also has it to where if the current close minus the previous close, if it's greater than the DTR or the ATR, then it'll generate a dot. And then obviously if the high and the low of the candle, if that's above, say 2 times the ATR, then it will generate a dot. And then there's the distance from the exit envelopes, which the red here is the exit envelopes, and it's going to measure these dots. For example, like this is obviously over 2 times the ATR. So it'll generate a red dot. Like here, it's not from this, obviously it's right next to this exit envelope right here, the red line again. Then you have the normal distance from the actual baseline. Again, you can also just disable that if you don't want to deal with the red dots. The exit modes, you can see here, these are the buffers for if you're going to use an expert advisor. These are the ones, for example, this is the moving average baseline basically is buffer 0, the upper B band and the lower B band, 1, 2. The dots, which basically an up dot generates a 1, a down dot generates a -1. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a -1. And then no trend, no dot, whatever, no trade, don't get in is a 0. And the exit, which is buffer 14, exit the trade when that turns 1. Like right now we have it set to price goes above or below the baseline. And actually I'm going to set it to the close. Goes above or below the baseline. I don't know if you saw the change there, but these things, I'll go back. Okay, this is the close goes above or below, but right now I'm going to set it to the price goes above or below. So you can see that the price came down and hit it. In order to have that, I'm pretty sure that on an expert advisor, you have to have it generated by the tick method, as opposed to just waiting for the close. So that will be up to however you program your thing. And then it has if close goes below, so it has to close below or above the baseline. So we saw some of those disappeared, like that closed above. You can barely see it, but it did. Right here it did the same, and there. So, and then all these other ones, that's the basic idea right there. All these other ones are above, below the trend exit envelope, which the trend exit, so down trend, is this exit envelope right here. If it goes, see right here, it crossed above this, so generated an X exit right there. And then if price does, does the same thing down here. And then this one is the opposite of the trend line. So we're in a downtrend, so it's going to be this one, which is for the uptrend. It has to cross C, so it sticks the X there. Okay. Next one is the trend entry line, which again, this is the green line right here. If it goes above that, which it went right here, it didn't right there, but it did right here. You can exit there, and then the other one is just the opposite of the trend entry. So it's, again, way over here. And that's the only difference between the close and the price. And these numbers, it's just the number of the setting. So that if you just put a 0 when you're trying to send the parameters to the expert advisor. And the same thing, like up here, that's what these numbers are. And, the various numbers for whichever one, you just put that number, this right here. And it uses this, the ADX VMA, it uses a separate period. So it's down here, and the same thing, like, because you have the same thing down here. It's kind of interesting on the B bands. So that's it.